Hello, and welcome to Level Die Kaizen, the anime arm of Level Die. Today, I'm joined by my good friend Quentin, and today we're going to be talking about Goblin Gang Rape. I mean Goblin Slayer. So I say Goblin Gang Rape because within the first 10 minutes of the first episode, a girl does get gang raped to death by goblins. Pretty hefty start
Certainly
to the show.
Doesn't hold back anything. You get a lot of shit in the first episode that kind of makes your jaw drop.
Yeah, but the thing is after the first episode, it calms down. It really hits you up front with the worst stuff, and then like after that, once Goblin Slayer is introduced, basically, and I think they did this so that we want to see the main character slaughter goblins. Because we want, it's not like, because up until this point, I've always thought as goblins as like funny little green creatures that are just kind of like troublemakers. But in this series, they are brutal, horrible creatures that will kidnap women and children and rape them to death and torture them, and they're horrible, horrible animals. And the Goblin Slayer slays goblins. That's all he does, and he's good at it. It was good to upfront us with the brutality so that we can go, God, I want to see him kill these goblins. And he kills... Go ahead.
It does a very good job of just like giving you the fucking motivation that he has. It does a good job of showing like why these creatures need to be fucking eradicated.
Right.
They're not just a nuisance. They're not the goblins you think of when like, you're playing games and there's like a fucking really low level creature that's just a fucking nuisance. It's not really doing anything.
Like it doesn't just break onto your farm and steal your ale and get drunk in your barn. They like kidnap your daughter and your wife and take them to a cave.
Wooden club. No, they'll stab you with a fucking dagger. They'll take your daughter and they'll go fucking rape her because they introduce it within the first episode like that. That's the only way that they can procreate.
Yeah,
they have to rape human women or like other creatures, elf women too. It's the setting takes place where there's dwarves, there's elves, there's goblins.
It's sort of humans. A dark fantasy, but the thing is, it's like
fantasy world.
It's literally D&D because everyone is an adventurer. Like everyone goes to this guild to be an adventurer, and the series opens with like 4 beginning adventurers going, oh, cool. So like they're like a low rank. So they're like low rank adventurers, and they go to the guild and they pick up a goblin slaying quest. And they go, okay, cool. So we're the rank appropriate for slaying goblins. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to go slay these goblins in this cave. And they end up getting super overwhelmed by just making small mistakes. Like it was a dark cave, and they ended up getting surrounded because there was like a small sort of side turn out of the main cave, and the goblins got behind the adventurers and then pincered them and killed all of these children, basically. I mean, they were like teenagers, except for one girl, the white mage.
Right.
But
goblin tricks are how they get people. It's like they're small creatures, but there's many of them. And they will try to deceive you. There's the 2 diverging tunnels that you can't even see, and they'll come from behind in that tunnel.
Because you think that there's only one tunnel inward, and he was like, and Goblin Slayer even says, like, if you weren't paying super close attention, you missed it. And obviously you did. And that's how they got you. Like, that's something that goblins are known to do. Like, I think they say in the show, like, they're as smart as kids, but kids are pretty smart. Like, they can do some smart stuff.
Typically, there's one that's smarter than the rest of them. There's
like a hobgoblin or a mage or something.
And they'll be telling them what to do, and then they'll follow directions. Like, they can learn quickly, but they're not
and that was something they talked about, too. So, like, if a goblin survives an encounter with a hero. So say Goblin Slayer goes into this cave and he doesn't kill every single goblin in the cave. Those goblins that survived are going to escape, create a new nest, and learn from what happened in the engagement with the Goblin Slayer last time, so they won't be caught in the same kind of trap, or they won't be or they'll reinforce their cave or something with better traps, because he makes it very clear. And one of the reasons why they upfront us with this brutal murder and rape of this group is because right after, Goblin Slayer goes, "Oh, we have to kill the children too," and he like bashes a bunch of goblin babies, and it's like he's like, "Look, if we let any of them live, they're going to have blood vengeance against you. And what are they going to do? They're going to make a new nest, and they're going to go raid a town, and they're going to be stronger and smarter than this group. So I have to kill every ounce of goblin in this cave." And the little girl's like, "Oh my God, you can't kill the babies." She's like, "Oh, I'm going to smash these babies."
Exactly. I got to smash the babies. It's like it's a club.
You got to smash the babies.
They're a baby seal in Alaska, and he's fucking a hungry Inuit, and he just smashes the shit out of all of them.
Oh my God, dude! And it's
pounds into a pulp.
But
again, that was one of the things that it doesn't hold back from in the first episode. It's like it goes through from the rape straight to baby smashing.
Yes.
And they shriek.
Oh, it is. It's like pigs. It's like
like a stuck pig.
It's horrible. But again, it's like, man, I swear to God, it was a little hard to watch. So there are a few different kinds of manga in Japan. So what we're typically used to when, like, at least me, I'm used to shonen, which is teenagers or children. So Full Metal Alchemist, Naruto, Bleach, that's all shonen, which is for kids. It's literally for kids. This is a seinen, which is an adult manga or anime. So they can handle more adult themes. Like, literally, aside from showing goblin dick going into that woman, we literally see everything. And it's hard to watch.
Right. That's one thing I want to talk about. I have in my notes here is like Japan differs so much from the U.S. is because like legally they won't shy away from that stuff. Movies and things here have been historically governed by an ethics code. It's called Hays Code. I think it's Motion Picture Production Code, and it's been around. It was like the 20s to the mid 60s. There was an ethics code in the American film industry because they didn't want the actual government to come and step in. So they were governing their own movies.
They self-governed.
With things like you couldn't show certain themes like abuse. Like you couldn't show like
that changed, and those things changed.
Abuse. If there was an evil character that did something bad, you actually had to show that character being punished. You had to, like, if they robbed a bank, you had to show them getting slapped in cuffs.
Right.
And Japan doesn't have that, and they didn't historically have that. So the freedom of speech, freedom of expression in all of their art forms, even in like the manga books and anime, you can show a lot more, you can have a lot more, and people are used to it. You can show themes that are a lot more adult, like you said. I forgot the word you said. What the actual manga is like? Seinen manga. You can have that, and it's
like
just
way
like
more.
That would have to be.
Yeah.
It couldn't be made money off of here. You can produce it and like show it online.
This would be a rated R, not in theaters, direct to DVD movie. Like, if you wanted to do this,
on like Cinemax, it's too much fucking, you wouldn't be able to show that here.
Which I've always found very.
That's one thing I liked about Japan.
They have to blur all of their pornography, but they can show way more skin than we can, especially because of the way, like, because it's all drawn and they have like a different. It's like it's not real people, so we can do whatever we want. Like, that's sort of like their attitude towards it. So they show everything up to like nipples and vagina. Like, they don't show those two things, or they don't show penises, but they'll show like tons and tons of skin, like more skin than you've ever seen.
They'll show a lot of penis, and they'll just black the tip. They'll show a lot. But besides the fact that it's censored, the fact that they can show all those themes is true freedom.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah,
and they definitely don't shy away from it in Goblin Slayer, and they do it right off the bat. And I had looked through, the first volume of the manga,
Mm-hmm.
and they even get more in depth with it. They get more time to each that scene, but it is absolutely brutal. It introduces one of the side characters before it introduces Goblin Slayer.
Yeah.
And it introduces the priestess, and she's like young. It mentions she's 15 years old.
She is a child
at the start.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a kid right out of priestess school, and she's going on her first ever quest, and she's going with these low rank adventurers who are figuring out a small quest they could do.
Yeah.
And you start getting attached to these characters, these adventurers,
because they're cool. They're like literal video game characters. You were
they
like, dude.
They give you backstories for the fighter. They give you backstories for the mage girl.
Yeah.
But then right off the bat, they all get brutally fucking murdered by goblins, like in the most horrific ways possible.
And they don't shy away from showing them getting limbs chopped off or
right.
like the suffering they're having, and like it was like 8 goblins like tackle this fighter because his sword's too long and it clangs up against the ceiling of the cave, and he can't swing at the goblins, and then like 8 goblins like tackle him and just stab the absolute shit out of him, like Red Wedding style, within the first like 8 minutes of this anime. I was just like, oh my God, what is happening to these poor children? And then
100% kids.
And they were so happy to go and do this quest, and it was just so horrifying. And then Goblin Slayer walks in with his like just one of the best armor designs I have ever seen in anything. I just think his armor is amazing.
No bullshit. He doesn't have any unnecessary thrill to his armor.
God, I can't wait to talk about some of this stuff. I think the Goblin Slayer as a character is amazing. I think he probably went to the guild, and I think this is what happened. He goes to the guild, and he goes, hey, any goblins? And she goes, well, a bunch of adventurers just took a quest in a cave to go slay a bunch of goblins. And he's like, oh, fuck. I'm going to go save them. They're probably already dead, so I'll go clean up. And he walks in, and literally they're all dead except for the priest girl, who I think has her part of like a chunk bit out of her arm, I think. And they're like,
shot with an arrow is what she got.
Oh, she got shot with an arrow. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, right. But they're closing in to rape her. I don't really want to like shy away. I mean, it's hard to say the word rape so many times in this podcast.
They need the women. And they don't shy away from the fact. I'm saying shy away so many times. They don't fuck around with the fact that goblins need to rape girls to procreate. That's how their species does it.
It's horrible.
And it's when things are a reality, I think it's okay to show them. And like that's how it works. It's how the goblin race works in that universe. And
yes.
They show it. They definitely show you how that works.
And I think it's important so that we can be on the side of Goblin Slayer, because he does a lot of really dark stuff throughout this show to these goblins. I mean, he's like a genius at goblin killing. And it's very important for them to set up for us that he has to brutally murder all of these goblins. And if they didn't show us, if they just told us what happened, we wouldn't get the gravity. They had to show us what the goblins are capable of so that we can side with Goblin Slayer smashing babies. It's the only way. They say it in, like you said, that's the reality. So the reality is he has to murder these babies, or humans are going to get kidnapped, raped, and filled with goblin children. And I appreciated that about the show, because after the first episode, they don't do like any of that anymore. There's no more of that because we just follow Goblin Slayer, and he's right. The best.
They don't fetishize it. That's the thing. It's like it's not there as jerk off porn. It's like it's there to show you the brutality of goblins.
Right.
And they do it
once,
as briefly as they need to. And yes. Then it's over. Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. So then Goblin Slayer walks in with a gladius, which if you don't know what that is, it is the sort of Roman short sword. It's, I believe, it's mostly a stabbing weapon, but it's sort of a shorter sword. The edges are sharp, so you can slash with it, but typically it's a stabbing sword. And he just walks in with his sick armor. I mean, just the coolest looking armor. No frills, no bullshit. Like, everyone else is dressed like, not like high fantasy, like Japanese stuff where it's like tit armor and stuff. It's like pretty grounded, but like his sort of has a flair to it that really makes him unique in the universe itself. Like, the design of his armor is very cool. And they go into it saying, like, later in the show, they talk more about his armor. And they're like, dude, it is literally specifically designed to handle killing goblins and nothing else. So he walks in.
I think specifically, it's jarring because everyone has a face.
Yes.
Except him. Like, nobody's wearing a full face helmet, except him.
Which is also
and that, it definitely makes him stand out, and like he seems like this faceless fucking Goblin Slayer.
Oh God, and he is in the coolest way. Like, he's not even edgy because you get his personality. Like, his personality shines through, and he's not like an edgelord. He is just sort of quiet and likes to slay God. Well, he doesn't like it. He has to do it. And the thing is they talk about this in the show. Goblin slaying quests are seen as below most people. So he, as someone who's lived through a goblin-based trauma where his farm was attacked and his sister was like raped in front of him, and he couldn't do anything about it, and his whole family was killed, and his farm was burned to the ground. He is someone who has firsthand experience in how horrible goblins can be, and he's made it his life's mission to eradicate the world. Like, there is literally a whole side quest about like a Dark Lord coming back and how someone needs to stop this Dark Lord. And he's like, I don't care about that at all. I just need to get rid of these goblins. That's all I care about.
He's definitely a realist on the level. Like, he mentions that if we stop, goblins will take over villages, and we don't have the villages, we don't have the people, we don't have wheat, we don't have food. Like, if all these small villages being attacked are important, like, he's not a bigger picture guy. He's like actually low to the ground, down to earth with the people, knowing, because it happened to his village, and he knows that these people are necessary. These people aren't just villagers. He knows these people are people.
Yeah, they're not, and we have to maintain these villages, because if we aren't careful, goblins will amass numbers outside of town, and then they'll investigate the village in the middle of the night. So they also say, like, this is really cool. I mean, they go really in depth into like
goblin psychology,
into goblins. So their time schedule is the opposite of ours. So our evening is their morning. So it's opposite. So when we're asleep at night, they're active.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
And so and this is one of the things that comes up in the last episode, and we'll get to it in a process, but Goblin Slayer lives in at a farm, and every morning he gets up and he checks fence posts, he checks for footprints, he checks for trampled grass, and one of the things we know that they tell us is that goblins will want the night one, they will go and they will investigate the farm, and then the next night they will attack. That is what they do. That's their process. So we get a scene where after this anime is 12 episodes long. And every single episode, maybe minus a few, we get him getting up in the morning and checking the fence posts, checking the grass, checking for footprints. And then in episode like 10, we get to the end of his process and he sees 1,000 tiny goblin prints. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. Like, they are finally at his farm. And that was like a big thing. And it wouldn't have had the impact if they didn't drill into us. Not only does he check every morning, but goblins have an opposite time schedule as us. So this comes up a lot. So he'll specifically choose times to hunt goblins when they're going to be asleep or when they're just waking up. I think he typically does when they're just going to bed or when they're just waking up, because then they're like groggy. And he knows that when they're groggy, he has a better chance of getting in unnoticed. He isn't a superhero. He's a human being, and they make that very clear because he literally dies like 8 episodes in, and then like a spell happens, and they manage to basically bring him back to life.
Happens.
A spell. Yeah, I'm going to say in quotes
if a spell happened.
He laid down with a naked lolly, dude. I mean, that's what really happened.
Again, it's the reality of it. You had to, get the virgin blood all over your fucking peen, and then you're alive.
Amazing, dude. Amazing. So one of so we get that cave, and he comes in. We're still on episode 1. So he comes back, and he comes in, and he saves this princess, or not this princess, this priest. And he goes through, and he just stabs Goblin. He's efficient. And one of the things he also does that I love is he'll use their weapons. So he'll stab one, pin him to the ground with his gladius, and then he'll just pick up one of their spears or one of their knives. He doesn't just use his axe or his spear or whatever. He is a man who knows what he needs to get done, and he will use all of his resources to do it.
Their sense of smell is so good that they'll smell like the metal. They'll smell your armor.
I forgot about that. Yes.
So picking up their weapons is beneficial because it has their smell already and it doesn't smell like you.
But also he covers himself in blood.
Right. So you said like he knows. He knows to do this. He knows to do that. It's just he's been fighting goblins so long that he just knows everything about them. He knows how they operate. He knows you need like the shorter sword in the caves.
And they even make like there's like a 5-minute part where he goes, "Oh, his sword was too long. That's why he couldn't fight in the cave."
That's why I carry this gladius, this short sword, because I was just swing it in the small caves that these goblins live in. Right, and he mentions, the cave. You got fucked over by the entrance that you wouldn't really look for unless you knew about this totem that you got distracted by. This is a shaman totem. Like he's going like encyclopedic knowledge of goblins and how they operate. And it's just wicked cool how fucking much he knows about goblins and how to defeat them. Because like nobody else gives a shit.
Yeah.
Like, he's the only one that cares, and he cares so much because he knows how important it is.
And I think it's really cool because we finish the cave, he kills everybody in the cave, and then he starts doing this tutorial for us. And again, this is the first episode where he's really imprinting in us. Not only is he the best at doing what he does it because he has to. It's not like, man, I fucking love killing goblins. It's like they need to die. They need to be eliminated. But like I loved, and it was just like, oh, he walks up to the totem, he goes and he shines his torch into the hole. He's like, bam, that's where you guys went wrong. And she was like, oh my God, I didn't even see that. And he's like, yeah, you wouldn't see it because when you looked, your eye line went to the totem, which is the opposite side of the hole. And so you walked right past the ambush point. And they knew that you would do that because they're smart enough. They're smart enough to take advantage of people who aren't smart enough to outsmart them. And that is something I really like. And when they have a shaman or they have a hobgoblin or they have a goblin king, they're even worse to fight because they have something that has a higher level of intelligence guiding them. Like when you have just a bunch of goblins, in a group, they're easier to kill than when you have a mastermind controlling the group. And the first cave in the first episode was controlled by a shaman. So that means that they're more of a threat and that these kids didn't know because like the totem basically said, we have a shaman here. And that means that they should have been like, ooh, we're not prepared. But they were like, oh, they're just goblins. Like they're just like, dude, I chased one. Oh, they actually say this in the show. People get confident when they chase a goblin out of their farm. They're like, oh, well, I'm strong enough to defeat a goblin, basically. But it's like, not really. Like, that was just like a scout checking out your farm.
That's not how they operate. The scout on your farm doesn't have all those traps in his cave. He doesn't have all his family.
Right.
He doesn't have, everything that he has. He's there to look at your farm. Of course he's going to run away. But, like, the humans, they they do it and they're like, yeah, I could totally take one of those scrawny little tiny goblins. I could do it.
Yeah.
But they don't know that they're going to have to take on 50 with poison daggers and arrows.
And those poison daggers are brutal because they paralyze you. It's not about killing you. It's about paralyzing you. So again, they can rape you. It's very dark. It's very specific and in detail, and it's something I appreciate very much. So the next major engagement we get is that sort of rundown castle, right? Where he goes in the middle of the night. Is that the next one that we get?
Yeah, it introduces the farm on the second episode, and I think he goes back to the guild to grab a quest.
And his big titty cow waifu.
Yeah, her name is Cowgirl. And like in the Japanese, like that's her name is just how you would say cowgirl, and that's her name. But that's how all of the characters are named. There's like an elf character, and her name is Elf. Like it's like Erfu in Japanese.
Yeah, okay.
Erfu.
Actually, never noticed that.
And then there's a lizard guy, and all of their names are just like lizard guy, dwarf guy.
Yeah. Who was your favorite of? So he eventually gains an essentially permanent party. For the first 2 or 3 episodes, he's solo, and he's been solo up to this point. But he eventually gains a permanent party of a cool like lizard man, a dwarf, an elf, and the lolly priestess. Who was your favorite of the permanent party?
It's between dwarf and lizard man.
Really?
I like the drunken dwarf.
He is cool. Yeah, and his magic all engages with like the liquor, like the sleep spell. He like sprays liquor in the air, and it turns into like spores and makes him fall asleep and stuff.
It's like moonshine that's so strong that just makes him pass out immediately, blackout drunk.
I love it. I like the priestess. I like the girl.
She's a nice little priestess waifu.
Because she like learns with him, like, you know, she gets the chainmail, like she learns and she just like really appreciates Goblin Slayer, and she's like a lolly waifu. This anime is full of waifus. You get the drunk like a lolly elf waifu, you get the big titted cowgirl waifu, lolly waifu, and then you get Guildmarm waifu. Which
that all want to fucking bang him.
All want to bang him, kinda. Yeah, because like, dude, he's no, stoic.
Goblins only.
Goblins only. Sorry,
I'm here to fuck one thing only, and it's Goblin homes.
Dude, and so I thought this from second one. Goblin Slayer is literally Mike if he focused all of his autistic energy on slaying goblins.
Yeah, like instead of like speed running and stuff.
Yeah. So Mike from Level Die, you've all heard him, but right when the show started, I was like, oh my god, this is Mike. If he wanted to slay goblins, he would be Goblin Slayer. Like just kind of like a quiet, cool dude who is like single-mindedly focused on eliminating something. Like our Mike is single-mindedly focused on memes. If we could channel his autistic energy into goblins, he'd be the Goblin Slayer.
Dismiss bitches, slay goblins.
Yes.
So wait, we could move him to Texas and get him a rifle, get him like some pigs, get him on pig removal, and it'd be exactly the same.
Oh, boars? Like I would equate hunting wild boar,
right? Wild and species boar.
Oh my god!
I would equate that to be the same thing as the goblin removal. You know, you've got this like species. If you don't get rid of it, it's gonna overrun everything else. But nobody actually gives a shit enough to do it.
He would be the best boar hunter ever. He's like, hey, we're gonna get a hot air balloon for this one. And I'm like, oh my god, Mike, why? He's like, well, because we're in an area where
we gotta get in the air.
We gotta get in the air. I'm just like, I was like, all right, man. You're the man. You're the boar slayer. So let's get up in this hot air balloon.
And they can smell my weapons.
Oh my god. He's like, I have to cover myself in boar blood so they don't smell me. Yes. So he eventually gets this. Not Mike. Goblin Slayer. Goblin Slayer eventually gets this sort of permanent party, and I believe they team up with him because they're unifying to sort of get rid of the Dark Lord, but they have like an issue with like goblin camps rising up, like a big one. It was sort of like there's like this huge goblin camp, and we need to eliminate it. And this is one of the coolest fucking episodes, or two-part episodes in the show that really shows how good he is at his job. Mm-hmm. So they get up to this. It's like a rundown castle, basically, like a huge castle. That's like run down and stuff, and there's like goblins watching guard, and it means there's goblins inside, and they don't know why the goblins have been so active and are so strong right now. And we find out a little bit later that it's because they're being controlled by a demon, like a giant ogre. It was an ogre, I believe. So when goblins have a controlling mind, when they have a mastermind, they're much more threatening because they have something of higher intelligence that is more powerful than them, guiding them to do smarter, more tactical like engagements. And
right, they're not that smart collectively, but they're smart enough to do what they're told.
Right.
So if you have someone to tell them what to do, then you can definitely organize a force that's to be reckoned with.
Yes, and that's what they learn in this sort of castle siege. So it opens with like us getting to see like how good the elf is with her bows, and they're like, and she shoots like the two guards and like right in the head, kills him. And he's like, cool, all right, let's move on. We're gonna move in. They get in, and there's like a room of sleeping goblins, and I love this part because we see from the perspective of the elf what the Goblin Slayer is doing. So they're fighting all these goblins. They get in, and then there's like a room of sleeping goblins. Goblin Slayer orders the dwarf to put like a sleep spell over the whole area, and he's like, okay. And then like they're already sleeping, but it puts them into like this deep, won't wake up sleep, and he goes goblin to goblin, just stabbing them in the throat, just killing them. I mean,
yeah,
and
one
then
by one, just
one by one,
walking around, stab.
And then we see it focuses on the elf, and the elf is like, "Oh my god! Like my sword is literally slick with goblin blood. Like I can't even hold it." And then she like looks over at Goblin Slayer, and Goblin Slayer picks up a goblin weapon and kills a goblin with it, and then just moves to the next thing, picks up a goblin knife, kills it with it, picks up a goblin spear, stabs a goblin with it, and she's like, oh, he uses their weapons to kill them so that his weapon stays, like, not soaked in blood.
Not covered in goblin blood.
And so she goes, okay, and then she grabs a knife and, like, slays a goblin while it's asleep, and they have a hard time doing it. You can see on her face, she's like, this is kind of like really brutal. Like it's kind of hard for me to like kill an unarmed sleeping enemy, you know, and a lot of people feel that way. It's like, you know, it's sort of cowardly to attack an enemy that isn't aware of you or isn't even with you. You know, it's sort of like that warrior code. And Goblin Slayer isn't affected by that because he knows that I need to do whatever it takes to kill these goblins or they will kill me.
Right.
He has
They'll
no
kill
qualms.
me in my sleep if I don't kill them.
Exactly. He has no qualms about doing the dirty work it takes to kill massive amounts of goblins when most people would be like, this is horrifying what you're doing. And it would be like, and he would just have to say like, look, if we were asleep out in the forest, resting under the stars, relaxing, and a goblin came upon us, do you know what they would do? They would murder us in our sleep. They would stab us in our necks. They would kidnap you two and rape the shit out of you. And that's what would happen. So we need to take the steps that they would take because it's fair in that way. They're going to do brutal things to you, so you got to do brutal things back to them. It's what you got to do to get rid of goblins. Then we get...
Strike hard, no mercy.
No mercy. That would be, if you could describe Goblin Slayer, it would be no mercy for goblins. Absolutely no heartache whatsoever about doing what he needs to do for these goblins. So then they meet the ogre, and this is where we get, because he's kind of seems superhuman to us up until this point, where he's hyper intelligent about goblins. He doesn't seem to have any issue fighting goblins. But then we meet I would say like a 20-foot tall ogre, huge ogre. And he goes, oh shit, so this is why they're so strong right now. And then all 4 of them engage in a battle with this ogre. And Goblin Slayer gets his ass kicked. He's getting thrown around, he's getting smashed, he's getting brutalized. I mean, the dude's got like stamina that's obviously hero level, but he's bleeding, he's tired, he's having to like struggle. And it humanizes him, because up until this point he's been a goblin slaying king of the world. And if the show continued with him just like being able to eradicate goblins no problem, it would be boring. But when we get to see him face an enemy that is above his level, and he said that, he's like, oh, this is like a not a platinum level, but it was like, this is like a gold level enemy, which means they have rankings in the guild starting from pewter to like porcelain, diamond and stuff.
It's porcelain to platinum.
Porcelain to platinum.
The top 2 are like platinum and gold, and those don't go out in the field. Like platinum are literal heroes.
Like save the universe heroes.
Right.
Like
they talk about like the Demon Lord a lot, who's like a long defeated enemy. Like that was like the Demon Lord. Like it was like the devil came to life and was like fucking 50 stories tall and was like wrecking shit with an army. Like the 3 heroes who defeated them are like platinum level, and then gold, those do like missions on like a national level. And then Goblin Slayer's silver rank.
He is silver,
and
which is the most common
3rd highest
level.
It's not the most common.
I think it goes higher than platinum. Highest.
No, it's platinum, gold, and silver. Because I've just read that page in the manga.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And so porcelain's what you start with, and it's like it gets more like rare material as it gets higher. And so he is the 3rd highest rank you could be, and he got that way solely from killing goblins.
Which is awesome.
It's like if you were playing Monster Hunter and you were able to like get points instead of having to do specific quests to level up, and you got to like the 3rd highest hunter rank just from killing deer, like random ass deer, instead of doing the big monster quest. You did hundreds of them, so you got a high enough fucking level.
Like those.
You got that rank just killing one of the lowest level things.
Yeah, and they are considered, goblins are considered like the lowest level, like one of the lowest level things you can fight.
They would let a party of porcelain ranked adventurers go out and fucking try to take it on.
Right. So
because they're supposed to be easy.
They are supposed to be easy. And like rats are on the same level as goblins. So that shows you that most people who are of silver rank, which is who we encounter a lot of other adventurers during the span of this anime, because every episode he goes back to the guild and he picks up a goblin slaying quest. That's essentially like the path of each episode. He goes to the guild after checking his farm. He picks up a goblin slaying quest. We get a goblin slaying quest. That is what it is. And when he's in the guild, we encounter a bunch of other adventurers. And those adventurers are typically silver rank adventurers. And they are taking on like fighting huge monsters, dragons, like snakes, like 3-headed snakes, hydras and stuff.
Yeah, there's some like specific, I wouldn't call them Goblin Slayer's friends, but they know Goblin Slayer because they're other silver ranked adventurers.
Right.
But there's like specific ones we'd meet, like there's Spear Dude.
Yes.
And then
the big titted mage.
Yeah, she's called Witch, which however you say that in Japanese is just her name.
Witch.
Like everybody else.
Something like
and Spear Guy is literally called Spear Guy.
Seriously? They didn't name any of these characters?
No, hold on, let me see. It's Spear Warrior or Spear Guy.
Spearman. And she is.
You're right. It's Spearman. It's one word. It's Spearman.
Spearman. That's awesome. It's probably because it's like he doesn't care what their names are. He's just like witch, spearman.
Well, because it's like you said, it's an RPG.
Right.
Their names are what they are. High Elf Archer is the High Elf Archer.
That's awesome. That's so great. We actually get quite a bit. This is, I would say, sort of a harem anime. He does hang around a lot of good-looking animated women, and they all want his Goblin Slayer peen. And that's okay, because they do it in sort of a low-key way. But it's just like fan service, It's just something for us. But even though he's not interested, I think it's very funny. But I think Guildmarm is probably the cutest one of, like, she really likes him, and, like, he's oblivious, and, like, she wants to, like, tell him that she's crushing on him. I think it's just funny. Like, that whole little side plot is very adorable. Where were we? I don't know. Slaying that ogre.
Yeah, we were talking about ogre. I got distracted by the guild ranks, and then started talking about the fucking well thought out guild. They fucking really went through.
This is what I'm talking about. Like, the universe of Goblin Slayer, I'd love to see more, and we're getting a movie.
It's so much bigger than what you see.
It is. It's huge.
They could tell a lot more if they wanted to, and you're like only seeing specific Goblin Slayer stuff. You're like, it's just like the Goblin Slayer. There's this whole grand scale of things going on,
and they mention it all the time.
They microscope you in to this one guy who's just killing goblins.
Like, seriously, every episode or two, they mention the fact that, like, there's a hero out there, like, trying to save the world, and he's like, I don't want to save the world. I just want to slay goblins. And that's, like, literally, like, the description of the anime. It's like he doesn't want to save the world. He wants to slay goblins. And it just sells. I mean, it's just perfect because it isn't about some world-saving hero who's impossible to kill and he's fighting, like, a ton of crazy enemies. It's about one normal dude who's just good at what he does, slaying, like, a nuisance, a rat. He's just smashing green rats, basically, for 12 episodes.
Right. But somebody's got to be the pest control. Somebody's got to do it.
And he's the guy.
You might not want to, but there's got to be somebody out there who's killing all these.
It's dirty, brutal work, but someone has to do it because most people, like with exterminators and plumbing and janitorial work, you feel that it's below you. But someone has to clean the toilets. Someone has to smash the bugs and the rats.
Right. And you think it's below you, but what if they didn't?
Exactly.
Like, what if they didn't exterminate? What if they didn't spray your house for bugs,
You would be swimming in spiders. You would be
so sad that these people are gone.
Swimming in spiders. And actually, they make a point of saying that in the show. When Goblin Slayer finds out that his farm is going to be targeted by goblins, he does something. His character grows as the show goes on. He becomes more open. He becomes more personable because he spent so much time around people, and he just really likes, like, the priestess and the elf and the dwarf and the lizard man. He starts, like, growing attached to them, and his personality starts to come out, and he starts being more open. And in the final episodes, when he finds out that the goblins are going to target his farm, he goes into the guild and he says, look, my farm where I live, my home, is going to be targeted for a goblin attack, and I need your help. I will post a quest, and I hope that you people will please help me. And everyone's like, dude, we need our Goblin Slayer. Like, you're like the weirdest, coolest dude we know. Like, we're going to help you. I mean, you're the guy. You're like the coolest guy in this guild, and all you fucking do is slay goblins. Like, if you need our help smashing goblins, like, we'll help you, dude. And they help him. And then you get like this giant and he like, oh my God, it's the coolest shit too.
Right,
because Goblin Slayer is like, here is how they're going to attack. And he's like a fucking general. And he sets it up.
Well, it's like the previous episodes does it too. It's like Ocean's 11, where like they talk about the heist as like the heist is going on.
Oh yes, and then the heist goes as they talk about it.
Doing cuts of it happening as they're doing cuts of it planning, and like that's how it goes on when they're planning the attacks and everything. Is like he'll be saying what he was planning on doing, and it'll be showing it all happening, and it's just so fucking cool how he's like so smart and so like tactical. Like he's fucking like 4-star general.
He is lasered in.
Amazing.
On how goblins operate. And he sets up, because he knows it's going to be a siege, basically because he's lived through a farm attack, because his sister and his mom and dad were killed. And he knows that this is kind of what they do, but he's spent the last, I would say, like 15, 16, 17, 20 years just slaying goblins.
He was like a kid, and now he's,
a man. So he spent his adolescence into manhood slaying goblins. And he not anyone else. I mean, he is probably the most knowledgeable person when it comes to goblins in the world of Goblin Slayer. And so he sets up he has a war room in his barn or whatever. And he's like, look, all right, they're going to sweep in from here. We need spearmen, and we need those wooden spears that we pull
Pikes.
up out of the ground. Yeah. Those things. They're stop horses. You've seen them.
The barricades.
Yeah.
And shit.
You put them up to stop horses. But what you can do is you can put them in the ground so the enemy doesn't know they're there. And then you can have people swing them up, or you can have people below them lift them up, that kind of thing. And it's really cool. The goblins ride around on coyotes. Is that what they ride around on? Kobolds. So they're riding around basically on horseback, and then they lift up their spears, and all the goblins slam into them because he just called it right. And he's like, okay, some of them are gonna sneak back through the forest and try and get behind, and then you just see a group of 20 dudes just slaying hundreds of goblins because they're just he's like, man, they just keep coming, and Spearman is out there and Witch is out there just brutally murdering thousands of goblins, and then there's a Goblin King, and the Goblin King is the leader of the pack. He's sort of the reason why they're so strong, why they have so many numbers, and this is a big, big event to be able to take on a Goblin King. And he goes into the forest and he finds this Goblin King, and he engages in brutal combat because a Goblin King isn't a goblin. It's smarter, it's stronger, it's a platinum rank enemy. And we have our silver Goblin Slayer go and take it on using scrolls, potions, spells, just all this stuff. I love the utilitarianism of Goblin Slayer. He doesn't shy away from using ancient scrolls. He doesn't shy away from using the enemy's weapons or using tricks and traps and deceit to try and win in a fight against goblins. I think he's a very likable character, especially as the series goes on and his personality comes out more and he gets more attached to his party and he starts trying ice cream and shit or drinking with his friends. He doesn't really
care about anything other than goblins until he gets friends. Then he cares about friends.
He meets the priestess and saves her, and then he expects her to just stop being an adventurer. And then they meet up in the second episode and she's like, oh, I'm gonna join you. Can I join you? And he's like, I guess. But
yeah, he's so we need to slay goblins. There's goblins. Let's do it.
He's like, I'm going to go slay some goblins. Do you want to come and do that? And she's like, yes, I want to be with you. And I really like that. I mean, he saved her life, but he didn't really see it as she owes me something. It was just what he does. He just does goblin slaying. He didn't expect anything from her. He didn't expect them to be friends or her to like him. All he knew was that not even that she needed his help, I don't think. It was sort of these people he probably expected them to already all be dead. Mm-hmm. And then he went in there to just finish up the job because he knew that they would fail. And he found someone who was alive. Did he intend to save those children? I don't think so. I think he knew that they couldn't handle it, and he was going to go pick up the pieces.
No,
oh my god!
Happens.
In that first episode, dude, he fucking kills that girl.
Mercy kill. So she got poisoned.
Oh my god!
The priestess is trying to save her, and he's like, "Don't bother. She's poisoned. It was a poison dagger. She's gonna die."
Yeah. Didn't she already get raped too?
Goes, yeah. Well, I think so. And then she goes, like, "Kill me," and he's like, "All right, stab," and he fucking kills her right there.
You make it sound a little happier than it was. He's like, "Yeah, okay," but it was just this really drawn out.
Yeah, it's like, somber as possible. He literally just said, like, "Okay," stab.
And then he just like slowly like just drives the sword into this 14-year-old girl's chest, and you're just like,
the reality was it was over.
Oh God. Because
she requested it, he did it.
We are the priestess, technically, in this scene where we would try and save this girl, but we don't know all the facts. This girl has already basically been raped to death, and she's like, "Please, God, just end my life." And you're just like, "No, you can be saved. You can be saved." And he's like, "No, she can't be saved," and he just fucking kills her. And it's like, oh God, why? Like, and again, if you're looking for some, like, this anime isn't long, and it is a roller coaster ride of pure enjoyment. If you're looking for a 12-episode anime that doesn't shy away from violence and blood and gore, but is also super well thought out, and it's not like the focus isn't the blood and gore. It's just trying to create a brutal reality for these people.
Right. It's not the focus, but it will show you that that's what happens. It's like if somebody got shot in the street, you would see it. Like,
you would see blood, it. And that's what it is doing in this show.
That happened.
Someone is stabbed and raped by a goblin. Like, we have to show it to you so that you understand the stakes, so that you associate yourself with Goblin Slayer. Because if the stakes weren't as high as they are in this show, Goblin Slayer would be a despicable person.
Right. You wouldn't identify with him as much. You wouldn't, advocate the killing of goblins as much if they were just a little nicer.
If they were like the Hobbs from Fable, you wouldn't, and they were presented in the way that the Hobbs are presented in Fable, you wouldn't want to watch them get slayed that way. But even in Fable, like, the Hobbs kidnap children and turn them into Hobbs. It's a pretty brutal thing, but they don't show us a kid getting raped by a Hob. And in Goblin Slayer, they go, "Oh, well, I'm going to show you so that you know what we need to do." And I appreciate that. And I appreciate this show. And I'm very excited for the movie that's coming out to finish up sort of the series, to give us like a little bit more. Because I really, really wanted another season. But the series is kind of perfect. It ends on a big battle. It ends like, you can't really further it anymore. We've seen the goblin slaying. We've seen the advancement of the character. Like, it's already happened. There can't really be another 6-hour long season, but we can do a movie where he goes and, like, like the Naruto movies, how it's just like they focus on like them like raiding a castle or something.
It's like one mission.
That is what we're probably going to get from the Goblin Slayer movie, is one mission.
One big goblin camp.
Yeah, and it's going to be a ride, it's going to be super fun. But it's just because we've already seen the show, and the character, he's as far as he can go as a person, as a character in growth, and in terms of extending the series. All we can get is one more fun movie where we get to be with the characters again. If you want to, all you got to do is just restart the show. It's only 12 episodes.
I'd honestly be upset if they expanded on him further.
You would be upset. Because it would start to fall apart.
There's these 3 girls, we got to pick one for him to be with. It's like, no, can he please just be what he is?
Yeah, he's a goblin slaying man. He's got like the love of his life, childhood friend.
Further, he knows what he wants, and that's what he wants, and that's what he should get. That's what would make me happy.
I think it ends sort of perfectly with the clash at his camp or his farm, and then everyone helping him.
One big baddie.
And then one big, like, huge platinum rank baddie, and then it's over, and he's like grateful because he knows the goblins won't attack his farm again because he slayed all of them, and that's the point. You know, again, it reinforces like none of them got away, all of them died, so that means that it might be a few years before another set of goblins sort of settles in the area and tries to do it again.
Ballsy. Yeah, I can get the numbers required.
You know, to do that and that's something that they talk about too, where it's like goblins know they need the numbers, and they'll just lie in wait and like raid traders who are traveling from town to town or whatever, or just pick off like tiny farms or tiny communities, and they'll grow and grow and grow. And once they reach that point, then they do get the testicles, the cojones, to really do something. And that was that moment, is the final episode where they and if the cool thing is there's no sort of like, it doesn't like flash over to seeing the goblins raising their ranks. All we see is him checking the farm every day. And then eventually he sees 1,000 goblin prints, and you're like, oh, it's on. It's on. So I think the show ended perfectly. I think it's the perfect amount of time, because it can get boring. Watching someone who's good at their job just do good at their job, it can get boring. That's why I think it's the perfect length. No season 2, and a movie based on a mission is perfect.
Yeah,
do you have anything else,
agree.
Quentin?
No, I'm looking over my notes. I don't think I have anything that I really want to talk about besides that. But it was a really, really good series. I enjoyed it a lot, and I think it tackled a lot of things that, you know, really wouldn't be tackled otherwise. You know, goblins need to be eradicated. It's just the way it is.
And we talked about it a little bit earlier. The world of Goblin Slayer is way more in depth than we
see. Right. We don't even see. We see big, harder enemies, but they talk about manticores. They talk about fucking dragons. They talk about harder enemies that, like, these other silver ranked heroes. We hear them talk about slaying, but we just don't get there because we're following, you know, the eyes of this person that only slays goblins.
I love it because it makes the world more exciting. It makes watching it again, like, which I'm probably going to do soon, because I'm watching One Punch Man right now, season 2, and I'm almost done with it. But I kind of would be down to watch Goblin Slayer again because it's like really good. The world is so big and so interesting, and it like excites me. I'm like, man, this is like such a thought out D&D based world, but like it doesn't go into any of it. It doesn't expand. There's no politics. There's no world like outside of the goblin slaying world for us.
Right.
But we talk to other characters that are living these huge, grandiose D&D campaign lives. But so, that's like, not us.
There's objects from other things that they use that are like, holy shit, that's a magical artifact. Like they use that porthole, and it's like a magic portal that the goblins use to get in and out of the sewers or whatever.
That mirror.
Yeah. Like that's a fucking magic mirror that teleports people. Like those objects exist, but we just get like the micro focus on just like specific ones only when they use it. Like the lizard, he's from a whole like area. He's from a whole different
clan, a whole different country,
right. A whole different fucking species of sentient people. And he's got like all this magic and shit that he can use. And it's like, I'd like, you know, to touch on that. Maybe they go visit his fucking
like the bone magic, people. And then the dwarf has like that alcohol magic. It's
so
very
like,
cool.
Definitely like there's a dwarf land somewhere where those guys live.
because they talk
like
about
the high elf area.
Because those three, the humans, the dwarves, the elves, and the lizard men, teamed up for once, to try and defeat the Dark Lord. And it's very interesting because this world is grander than what we are shown that it's grander, but we're not like shown that it's grander.
Right. We hear bits and pieces of it. Adventurers talking about like the Demon Lord coming and like, oh, I got sent on this task for the fucking mission, and then the Demon Lord's minions were there.
The coolest way to build a world where
it's much more
organic.
Yeah, organic, immersive. Yes. Like your townsfolk overhearing that.
That's what I felt watching this show, is like we are experiencing the secondhand, large, beautiful world of Goblin Slayer. We're experiencing it, but it's secondhand because all we're doing is we're hearing the stories, or we're talking to people, and those people are telling us of what they just slayed or where they just were. And that's not what we do. We visit like 3 towns, and we're mostly in sewers and caves. But that's what Goblin Slayer is about. It's not about being the hero. It's about slaying goblins. And
it's like playing D&D. The world exists, but we put the lens on a party.
Yes.
Just one.
Yes.
These 4 characters,
But imagine if your D&D campaign was only slaying kobolds. Like that's what your whole campaign was. But there's like this huge, and like what if a DM, right? He crafts this huge political campaign, this huge world-ending campaign, and you and me and one other guy, we're just like, dude, we just want to slay kobolds.
We just kept going to the guild market and going to the guild and taking quests. Like
where are the kobolds? It's just like, and the DM's just like, okay.
You guys have other stuff to do, and you're just like, you don't want to.
He's like, hey, and then he like brings up, Spearman comes in, and he says, man, there's a manticore, I could use some help. He's like, nah, we're gonna go slay some kobolds. And the DM's just like, oh my god, I just want you guys to be a part of the world. And it's like, nah, dude, come on, kobolds, we want to kill them. And I can just see that happening, and it feels like someone took like a D&D campaign and boiled it down to like just a set of sessions that they had where all they did was slay goblins over and over and over, and they got like really good at it. And they were just like, and then they made the DM think, and the DM was thinking of how to like counteract them because all they wanted to do was slay kobolds or goblins or whatever. And then they were like, dude, what if we made this a fucking anime? And then that's what it feels like, because there was at one point this huge world that the main character should probably be a part of. But it doesn't go that way. We follow a dude who just likes doing one thing. And I really dig that. It's a
Discovery Channel has, like a fucking the whole world series, the whole universe series.
Yeah.
But we're just watching only Dirty Jobs. That's it. We're just watching that show every day.
Oh my god! Yes, because Goblin Slaying is a dirty job.
One thing, yeah.
That is exactly right. That's the perfect metaphor for it, and I think it works because Dirty Jobs was a good show.
I want to watch Mike Rowe go like meet Goblin Slayer and be like, "All right, so what do you do?" And he's like, "Okay, so we're gonna go in this cave.
I'm gonna give you a sword. You're gonna need this sword.
You're gonna need to put this blood on you." And he's like, "Oh, this is a dirty job."
He's like, "Man, this is a dirty job." Dude, oh my god. You're an artist. You're good at Photoshop. Can you please
make that happen?
Please make that happen before I upload this, because that will be the picture that I upload. Man, this is a dirty job. Mike Rowe and Goblin Slayer, this is a dirty job. And fucking that'll be the picture of the fucking the YouTube video and the Instagram post. Please, Quentin, you are a Photoshop god. Please make that.
Don't say that, because I'm just going to see what I can do pasting a face on a Goblin Slayer fucking manga cover.
Yes, please. Just make it as shitty as possible. Well, that is all I have to say. I think it's a great show. I think you should watch it, even though the subject material is a little hard. We didn't even mention like the that queen, that blind woman who like we find out she was
the sword maiden.
Yeah, we find out like that this hero that saved the world at one point was blinded and brutally raped by goblins in her past, and she's deathly afraid of goblins, even though she literally saved the world from the Demon King. She is still terrified to her core of goblins because they blinded her, raped her, and she barely survived with her life. And we find that out in like the last half, because that's like one of the big arcs is they go into these the below, like the sewers below a water town, and they fight like thousands of I keep wanting to say zombies for some reason. I don't know why. They fight like thousands of goblins down there, and it was just brutal. Like, again, we see later in the show that people are affected by goblins in ways that we don't see. And Goblin Slayer's like, you sent me down there, and you knew what I would encounter, didn't you? And she was like, yes. And she's like, he's like, you were fucked up by goblins, weren't you? And then we get like the flashback of her being kidnapped, being raped, being blinded by goblins. And you're just like, fuck, dude. Goblins deserve to die. Like, they deserve to be brutalized. And I think the show continuously, like, even like when we start losing ourselves in the goblin slaying, they amp it up again and show us that one of the most beautiful, kind women in the entire world of Goblin Slayer was also made to be a slave of the goblins. I dig it, man. I dig this show. I literally could not stop watching it because it was so good.
They won't stop using you either. Like in the last episode, they show that they'll put the slaves on a shield, like a wooden shield, and then walk with them, like with them in front, so you won't shoot them with arrows or anything, because there's like a fucking living person that they're using.
That they've been raping for months. Yes, I remember that. Yes, because there was like 5 of them, 5 different people, and they're like, okay, we need. And then the Goblin Slayer called it. He's like, they're going to use human shields, so we need to set up a way to get rid of them so that we can start firing, because it was to stop arrows, like an arrow barrage, because if you fire arrows, like 1,000 arrows, you're going to kill humans. So they counteracted that trap because he knew that they would use their human sacrifices as shields. And then they stop it, they get the people unhung, and then they fucking arrow those goblins to death. And then they run in and they slay the shit out of them. And it's just, it's not euphoric. It's just sort of, it feels good watching these goblins die, because you know how horrible they are. And the only reason you feel that way is because the show makes sure, because they want you to feel that way. You know, you're not supposed to question Goblin Slayer. You're supposed to be angry at goblins. You know, typically you would question a hero's motives when you see him do these things. Like, is he sort of a bad person? Is he an evil man? But
for killing babies, for
slaying thousands of a living creature. They are living creatures. You know, they're
sentient, can speak, can learn.
They can, exactly. They're children. He said they're as smart as children, like 7-year-old kids. So is it okay to do that? And then they go, so then that's like the question. That's the overall moral question. Is it okay to kill a 7-year-old? Like a late term abortion. Holy shit.
If someone, you know, people are born with certain, in the Constitution they call it inalienable rights.
Yes.
You're born with rights to live, right to your own personal safety. And if you're the type of person that feels entitled enough to take that right from somebody else, I don't think you deserve to function in society.
Fair. So that's why criminals are put in jail.
Right. Treat it like someone who would be willing to take your life with a gun or something, you know? Like, do they deserve to live? Like, they were willing to kill you.
Yes.
Do they really deserve
And not even like willing. They want to.
They want to and have to.
to take your life and have to take your life, and they have to enslave you, and they have to rape you. And that is what's interesting about it, is it is a moral question. Is it okay that Goblin Slayer is murdering thousands of goblins and their children? And then what do? When you ask yourself that question, they reaffirm what Goblin Slayer is doing by yet again showing you another example of how brutal and evil and how deserving the goblins are of being annihilated. With the human shields, with the raping, with the fact that they also kidnapped and raped the Sword Maiden. You know, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that at all. I just expected that she heard about the Goblin Slayer and was like, oh, we have a goblin problem. I'm going to call him in. I didn't know that it was going to be about that she was a victim of the goblins. And when I heard that, I was like, they fucking deserve it. Every ounce of what they get, they deserve it. And I think the show does a good job of that, because they don't want you to be worried about the morals. The morals are there. The dude kills goblins, and he needs to, because they're vile, brutal, horrible creatures. They're evil. Okay, here's a question. They have 3 different ways that goblins come from. Greed, wanting to be someone else, or they come from the moon. Where do you think goblins come from?
That he does mention like that as like there's like one of the filler kind of episodes where he's just like talking about the history.
Where they're like sitting at the camp and they're talking.
Right.
Which I also
love.
I
like the moon one.
And I think
that would be even better, because like they don't deserve to be here. They're an invasive species for real.
They're an actual alien species set up to destroy humans. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that they honestly
if they were here around, you know, when humans were around, you know, whatever put them here with humans. If that happened, then they sort of have a right to be here, you know? And then that makes it a little bit less, more morally clouded.
Right. But if they are invading us to invade us, which is what I think that they're doing, then there are no morals about it. They want to destroy us. We need to destroy them. And I think, to be honest, when they did the mirror episode and we looked into where the goblins come from, I think it was the moon. I think that the goblins honestly do come from the moon. And now that I've been thinking about it since we've been talking about it, what if the movie takes place on the moon? And he goes to the goblin homeland and tries to kill all of them. Wouldn't that be the coolest?
It is like high fantasy. So you can go anywhere with it. That mirror could go to a different planet for sure.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like the moon, or maybe their moon's different.
Right. Maybe it has oxygen.
It looked like sandy. I thought, like, kind of.
Yeah, but that's what the moon looks like. It's sand. It's dirt. It's moon dirt and rocks. You know. I think it could be that the goblins do actually come from, like, in quotations, the moon, and maybe their moon is different. Maybe it has oxygen, you know, because it looked like there was water and plants and stuff like that.
That's not uncommon of a theme in Japanese media. Like Pokemon, a bunch of them come from the moon.
Really?
Yeah. Like Clefable and things like that. They're moon Pokemon.
Weird.
Yeah, so they'll put things on the moon. They don't care.
They'll put things on the moon.
You know, they can't put fucking ships on there, so they'll put other things on. You know,
interesting.
We are grounded in reality. We put
Western culture is very It's Tolkien. We are Tolkien. That's who we're inspired by in the West. The Japanese are inspired by crazy tentacle rape fantasies from fucking 400 years ago. So, I mean, they got some cool... They have a lot of magic. They have a lot of cool, like, there's spirits of the world. Like, their religion has spirits of the world and stuff. So, where they come from, it has cool demons and oni and those things. Yokai and stuff. And, you know, we don't have that. So, they could do that. But the thing is this seemed very Western in the way that it was grounded. It was grounded sort of in D&D is what I felt. I felt like it was literally Dungeons and Dragons, but like way more fucked up. But I was into it, man. What would you give? What's a good rating scale for this anime?
What rank?
Would
I give it?
Thank you, Quentin. Perfect.
I would throw that a silver.
You would throw it a silver. That's a very good rank.
Right. I wouldn't put it gold. What doing quests at the national level. I wouldn't put it platinum. It's one hero.
The world hero level.
I would say it's a silver.
I'm going to give it a silver too. That's just such a perfect. It's perfect. It's a perfect ranking for it. It's not for everyone, certainly. That would be like gold and platinum it's for everyone, super approachable, and engaging. It's very engaging. That's why it's as high as it is in my mind.
It has its dull moments. Like there's some episodes where it's quieter. A lot of talking. Yeah,
and it's just walking around, world building stuff, just quiet times. And that's...
Yeah, there's like a whole episode where he's just going on errands in the town, like buying shit.
And I honestly loved that episode.
It was great. It was good, like world building and everything. But
and because
slow, like
before that, we got a very big war scene, based like of him killing a lot. So it was good to like have like a calm episode after that, and then it goes back. So it does like the up and down sort of like waves, where it's like up with the violence, down with him checking the farm, up with slaying goblins, down with him talking to people and doing errands, up with the war. So I think it's not for everyone. Certainly, if you're going to be very uncomfortable with all you need to do is give it one episode. Literally, if you can make it through the first episode and you go, I need to see more goblins die, then you're going to want to watch the show. But if you reach that point where the goblin's hands dig into that girl's fucking ass meat and she gets raped, and you go, no, this is horrible, I can't watch the show, which I was almost there, man. I was like, fuck, dude, is this the whole show? Like, I don't know if I can fucking do this, dude. Because I don't like really dark, really brutal anime. I like some. Like, sometimes I like to watch a darker anime because they're interesting. But, like, I was like, dude, if the whole show is, like, watching little girls get raped, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And then, like, the Goblin Slayer comes in and he saves the day. And I'm like, I really like him. Like, I'm going to watch more.
Right, and then there's not that much more rape.
No, and it's done. It's basically done. The rest of it, they just allude to it, and people get brutally messed up. Like, the priestess girl gets, like, a huge chunk taken out of her later in the show, and that's, like, hard because you, like, really like her by that point. But other than that, they just allude to rape, and they don't show as much as they showed in the first episode. Like I said, they drop off after the first episode, but they have to hit you hard right away. And if you can get past that, the show is super watchable, and you'll probably
that was one of the, before I watched it, one of the criticisms I read was like, oh, people want to watch like girls get raped and stuff. It's like, it's not what it is. They show that, but they only show it as much as they need to.
As much as they need to.
How shitty goblins are.
Yes. He has to kill multiple people that have been rape slaves. He walks into a building and there's like an elf hung up on a wall, and she's like, kill me. And he's like, and the elf girl is right there with him. And she goes, oh my God, we got to save her. We got to take her home. And he's like, nah, dude, her mind is shattered. She's a dead person. She's dead. They're just keeping her alive to just rape her over and over and over again. And he just stabs her in the chest and kills her. And I'm just like, fuck. Like, those moments come up and they're hard. But again, it just drives home what he needs to do. And I appreciate it. I like this show a lot. Silver rank, 2 silvers. That's a great rank. That's a great.
And 2 big old cowgirl titties up.
Yes. 2 cowgirl titties up, 2 lolly titties up. I'm into it, man. I thought it was great. Is there anything else?
That's all I got.
Perfect. Thank you for watching Level Die. Thank you for listening. Thank you for starting your weekend right with Level Die. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of Level Die Kaizen. If you made it this far, please just share it with one friend, one person that you know, and send them a link. Let them know that you liked it, and hopefully we can get more people watching. Quentin, I really appreciate you being on. Thank you for being a part of the show.
No problem. You're very welcome.
Simply be despair, and we'll see you next time.